The tennis world just got flipped upside down, and here's why. The tennis world just witnessed a moment that no one truly predicted. It wasn't a dramatic final. It wasn't a shocking upset. It wasn't an emotional celebration after lifting a trophy. It was a statement, brief, clear, and carrying more weight than any trophy. Broadcast live on television by Amélie Mauresmo herself, the director of Roland Garros, one of the 4 most prestigious Grand Slams on the planet. She spoke about Alex Eala. And it wasn't out of social etiquette. It wasn't a polite pat on the back. She spoke with genuine admiration about the power, the movement, the tactical variety. And more importantly, she publicly admitted that Mauresmo herself had proactively welcomed this 20-year-old Filipina girl before the tournament even began. Let that sink in for a moment. The director of Roland Garros, personally, proactively welcoming a 20-year-old player. This isn't standard social protocol. This is a signal, clear and unmistakable, that the French Open has seen something in Alex Eala that goes far beyond what the WTA rankings reflect. And today, at Pro Tennis 360, the deep dive tennis analysis channel for those who truly want to understand the essence beneath the surface of this sport, we are going to dissect it all. Every word Mauresmo said, why it matters so much, and what this signals for the future of Eala, the WTA, and global women's tennis. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, now is the best time to do so, because this is exactly the kind of story where we always dig deeper than what you see in the headlines. Now, let's start with that moment. Mauresmo stood before the live TV cameras and said she loved everything: the security, the hospitality, the food, the schedule, the players. And when asked about Eala, her tone changed. She didn't just move on to the next topic like with other players. She paused. She spoke about Eala's power, about the movement, about the tactical variety. And then came the words the entire tennis world is talking about. Do you want to know exactly what she said and why it carries such massive weight? Keep watching. When a Grand Slam director speaks, what does it mean? Let's get straight to the point. In the world of professional tennis, tournament directors do not frequently appear on television to praise a specific player. That is not how the system operates. Usually, they speak in generalities. We are very happy to have many talented players participating. This will be a fiercely competitive tournament. The PR language is polished to the point where it conveys no real information. But Amélie Mauresmo did something different. She was specific. She spoke about Eala by name, with technical detail, with clear admiration. And most importantly, she admitted that she personally ensured Eala felt welcomed in Paris before the tournament started. That is something that simply doesn't happen for most young players entering Roland Garros for the first time, even those ranked significantly higher than Eala. So, why Eala? The answer lies not just in what she does on the court, it lies in what she represents off the court. Look at the data. At the Miami Open earlier this year, every time Eala stepped onto the court, the atmosphere of the entire tournament changed. The stands were packed. Ticket prices spiked to levels that surprised even longtime tennis observers. The tournament director, James Blake, quickly realized what was happening and made the strategic decision to place Eala on the largest courts, to maximize the reach and meet the demand of tens of thousands of spectators wanting to see her play live. It was a right decision, a wise decision.
And Roland Garros watched all of that. Mauresmo and the leadership team at Roland Garros do not act without reason. They have tracked the numbers. They have monitored the crowd reaction. They saw what happened at Indian Wells, where just one Eala match could generate waves of interest and massive ticket revenue. And they understood that this is not a temporary trend. This is a true phenomenon, and Roland Garros wants to be a part of it. The Miami Open and the lesson the tennis world had to learn. If you want to understand why Mauresmo did what she did, you need to understand the Miami Open 2026 first. And here's the interesting thing, because Miami isn't a Grand Slam. It's not Indian Wells, it's not Wimbledon or the US Open. In terms of historical prestige, it's a standard, albeit prestigious, WTA 1000. But when Alex Eala entered that tournament as a wild card, not a seed, not a star expected to win, something changed. And it changed from the very first round. The crowd came to see Eala the way people come to see a superstar. Not politely sitting and waiting, but standing up early, jostling for spots, carrying banners, and chanting her name in Tagalog amidst the Florida heat. The Filipino community in the US flocked to Miami in numbers the organizers had not predicted. And then came the numbers that were truly shocking. According to multiple reports and discussions surrounding the tournament, revenue from tickets, streaming, and media interest on the days Eala played was estimated to fluctuate from hundreds of thousands to nearly $1 million per day. Figures that even veteran observers had to admit were extraordinary for a 20-year-old player entering as a wild card. But here is the most important part. When Eala was eliminated in the round of 16, what happened wasn't that the tournament continued as normal. What happened was a sudden silence. Ticket prices dropped, online viewership plummeted. The electric buzz that had defined the entire first week of the tournament vanished almost overnight. That was the moment when tournament directors around the world began to truly pay attention. Not because Eala won, but because when she left, the tournament felt empty in a way that no one could fully explain with pure sports logic. This is so rare, it is almost unprecedented for someone of Eala's age and rank in modern WTA history. Indian Wells and the undeniable confirmation. If Miami was the first time the tennis world truly noticed the Eala phenomenon, then Indian Wells 2026 was the confirmation. And this time, no one could call it luck or coincidence. Eala's opening match at Indian Wells against Diana Yastremska created such a specific demand for tickets that discussions around the tournament suggested millions of dollars in ticket revenue were directly tied to that single match. Whether or not you agree with specific figures, one thing is indisputable. Eala has become a massive draw. The kind of draw that can move crowds, attract media, and generate global interest in a way that very few players on the tour currently can. And she is doing it at age 20. For those in the tennis inner circle for a long time, this was a true shock. Because traditional tennis builds large audiences around established superstars, those with 5 or 10 years of Grand Slams behind them. Serena Williams, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. These are names people who don't watch tennis still know, but it took years to build that recognition. Eala is doing the same thing, but significantly earlier in her career timeline. At Indian Wells, every time she stepped on court, attendance skyrocketed. Social media engagement exploded.
Clips of her matches went viral across multiple countries, catching the attention of casual viewers who never follow tennis. Broadcasters recorded spikes in interest. International newspapers increased coverage. Fans who had never followed the WTA began organizing watch parties, buying merchandise, and planning travel just to see her play. And once again, when Eala left the tournament, momentum slowed. The online buzz cooled down. Many casual fans who tuned in specifically for her stopped watching entirely. Tommy Haas, the head of Indian Wells, was reported to have spoken about the need for world tennis, including the WTA, to do more to capitalize on the massive global draw that Eala is bringing to the sport. Roland Garros listened, and they acted. What Mauresmo said and why every word matters. Let's go back to the core moment. Amélie Mauresmo's statement. She said she loved watching everything: the security, the welcome, the food, the sport, the schedule. And then, mentioning Eala, she spoke specifically about what this Filipina girl has shown. About the power, about the movement, about the variety, and most importantly, about how strong she is.
Now stop for a second, because this is what many people miss when reading that quote. Mauresmo didn't say Eala is a promising young talent. She didn't say we look forward to seeing her develop. That is the language used for potential players, those on a journey. She spoke about power, movement, variety, how strong she is. That is the language used for people you are preparing to face on the court, not those you are trying to nurture in a talent incubator. And then there is the part that is even more shocking. Mauresmo admitted she personally ensured Eala felt welcomed and comfortable in Paris before the tournament began. Not through staff, not through a template email. She did it personally. When was the last time you heard a Grand Slam director do that for a player at Eala's ranking? Think about that for a bit. This is a woman in charge of one of the largest and most complex sporting events on the planet. Thousands of employees, dozens of courts, hundreds of players, the logistics of a 2-week tournament in the French capital. And she dedicated personal time to ensure a 20-year-old Filipina player felt welcomed. That is not protocol. That is a declaration. Roland Garros wants the world to know they aren't just accepting Eala's presence, they are actively embracing it. It's not just about tennis. This is about something much larger. Let's be direct about this, because this is the part many traditional tennis commentators often avoid. But here at Pro Tennis 360, we speak plainly. The Alex Eala story is not just a story about a young player rising through the WTA rankings. This is a story about a cultural shift in a sport that has existed for hundreds of years. Tennis is a sport with deep roots in Western culture. Wimbledon, Roland Garros, private clubs of the 19th century, traditions of the European and American elite. For decades, the world's biggest tennis superstars came from cultures tightly bound to those traditions. And then, from the Philippines, a Southeast Asian archipelago with a population of over 110 million, a 20-year-old girl begins to change all of that. Eala is not just attracting Filipino audiences. She is pulling the entire Asian market into tennis in a way that the WTA and Grand Slams have never experienced on this scale. The global Filipino diaspora, estimated at 10 to 12 million people living abroad, is transforming itself into an economic force in tennis. They buy tickets, they book accommodations, they fly to Miami, Indian Wells, Paris, they watch streams, they create content.
They bring friends, people who have never watched tennis before, into the world of this sport. And here is the key insight that Mauresmo and Roland Garros understood before most other organizations. This is not a temporary audience. This is a new generation of fans being formed, people who connect with tennis not through history or tradition, but through the personal story of someone who represents them. And once they connect that way, they don't leave. They bring their children into the sport. They follow not just Eala, but the entire tour. They become the long-term fan base that any sport dreams of. Roland Garros understands that, and that is why Mauresmo is not just welcoming Eala, she is opening the door for that entire future. The schedule and Roland Garros's strategic decision. Let's talk about a detail most people overlook in this whole story, but for those who follow pro tennis, it reveals a lot. The schedule. In a Grand Slam like Roland Garros, the decision of who plays where and when is not random. It is a carefully calculated decision, considering many factors: ranking, matchup, TV ratings, ticket demand, and the time zones of key markets. And according to reports surrounding this year's tournament, the Roland Garros organizers spent significant time carefully planning where and when Eala would play, knowing full well that spectators are flying from the Philippines, from across Asia, and from many parts of the world to see her compete on the Paris clay. This is not standard logistics. This is an admission that Eala's crowd is not a standard crowd. These people are not just pure tennis fans. They are people with deep emotional investment, ready to spend money, dedicate time, and travel long distances just to see someone who represents them step onto the court. And the Roland Garros organizations understand that ensuring those people get a proper experience, not being crammed into a small court, not watching on a distant screen, is something they need to do.
This is smart business thinking combined with genuine respect. And those two things are not in conflict. Compare this to the approach of some other tournaments that didn't handle the Eala phenomenon as well. Places that weren't prepared, letting massive crowds be stuffed into courts with insufficient space, creating a poor experience for the very loyal fans the tour needs to keep. Roland Garros has clearly learned from those lessons, and that shows long-term thinking, not just capitalizing on Eala for this year's tournament, but laying the foundation for a relationship with a new audience base that will continue to grow for years to come. That is vision, and Mauresmo has shown it clearly. What this means for Eala's future. Now let's talk about the question everyone really wants to know. What does all this attention from Mauresmo, from Roland Garros, from the entire tennis world mean for Alex Eala's actual career on the court? And this is where the story becomes truly complex and interesting, because Ale's cultural and commercial draw is undeniable. But tennis is ultimately decided by the score, not ticket sales or social media metrics. So, where is she in terms of pure athletics? Eala is in a developmental stage that very few young players handle well, a period where external pressure can easily overwhelm internal technical growth. She is entering Roland Garros with massive expectations from millions of fans, with the lights of a Grand Slam for the first time under this pressure, and with public acknowledgement from the director of the tournament herself. That is a massive burden. Or it could be wings. It all depends on how Eala handles it.
And what we have seen throughout the past year shows she has the capacity to handle pressure better than her actual age suggests. In Miami, when the stands were vibrant with wild support, she didn't get swept up in the emotion, she played. At Indian Wells, when every point of hers became a global event, she maintained her tactical focus. Those mental skills, the ability to turn attention into fuel instead of a burden, are things that cannot be learned overnight. They are built through difficult experiences, through failures, through moments where you have to pick yourself up when no one is watching. Eala has had those moments, and they are shaping her. Clay is a different surface, slower, heavier, demanding endurance and the ability to build points patiently. This is a playground for those who can think several steps ahead. And if what Mauresmo said about Eala's power, movement, and variety is accurate, this could be the ideal surface for the kind of tennis she is developing. Tennis is changing, and Eala is part of that change. This is something that even the most skeptical critics must admit. Tennis is at a major crossroads. For years, the WTA has been searching for a new face, not just a good player, but a character who can pull tennis toward entirely new audiences. Someone who can do what Serena Williams did for her generation of fans, making people who don't watch tennis start watching because they connect with a story, with a person, with a journey. And here is the counterintuitive point I want to pose to you. Many people think that to change the tennis world, you must win a Grand Slam first. You must build a long-term track record. You must prove yourself over years at the top. But the data from 2026, from Miami, from Indian Wells, and now from Roland Garros shows something different. Cultural impact does not necessarily have to wait for athletic impact. Eala is changing the economics, the appeal, and the emotional reach of women's tennis right now, even before she places her hand on a Grand Slam title. Very few athletes in modern sports history have that capability. Not because they lack talent, but because this type of connection between an athlete and a community, between a story and a movement, is not something that can be created by marketing or PR. It has to be real. And with Eala, it is real. Her fans don't come because of an advertisement. They come because they see themselves in her. A young person from Southeast Asia, from a culture without a major tennis tradition, standing on the world's biggest courts and competing as an equal with the best players on the planet. Mauresmo sees that, Roland Garros sees that, and now the entire tennis world is being forced to see it. The question is no longer whether Eala is important. The question is, how will the tennis world react to this historic moment? Paris is waiting,
and history may be in the making. So, where do we stand in this story? We are standing at the threshold of what could become one of the most important moments in 21st century women's tennis history. Amélie Mauresmo has spoken. Roland Garros has acted. The schedule has been set. Spectators from the Philippines, from Asia, from all over the world are boarding planes to Paris. And at the center of all that is a 20-year-old girl with a tennis racket and a story that the world has not been fully told. But here is what I want to leave you with today, and this is a perspective few talk about. The importance of this moment does not depend on whether Eala wins Roland Garros this year or not. Even if she loses in the first round, this story does not end.
Because what has already happened? A Grand Slam director publicly admiring her, Roland Garros designing a schedule around her draw, tens of thousands of people willing to fly halfway around the world to see her play. Those things cannot be erased. They are proof that something large and real is occurring. And that is exactly the kind of story Pro Tennis 360 was built to tell. Not just who wins or loses, but what is truly happening beneath the surface of the sport we love. If you haven't subscribed to the Pro Tennis 360 channel, now is the best time to do so, because the 2026 clay season has only just begun, and we will be following every step of its movement, every story behind the news, every moment the mainstream press doesn't have enough time to dig deep into. Paris is waiting, Alex Eala is ready, and the tennis world, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, is holding its breath. Will she turn Roland Garros 2026 into the next chapter of a story that is redefining an entire sport? The answer is coming, and we will be here, along with you, to analyze every single moment.